All right. So welcome to the workshop today. Today we are talking about connecting with people and building rapport. This is a very, very useful skill. And I think more than anything, this skill shows how much of a skill job Cutco is versus a talent job. Because this was probably the thing I was naturally the worst at, building rapport and talking to people and going in and stuff. But because of great managers and good skills that they were able to teach me, and I was able to learn and execute this and have a great Cutco career with this in mind. So this isn't necessarily just for your customers. I mean, this is for everybody in your life. This will be very, very useful. This is one of the most universal things you could possibly learn, but it is definitely going to help your business there. And many of you heard it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's like somebody got hooked up because they had great connections. So being able to network and build relationships is an invaluable skill. You can benefit so many areas of your life. So here's how we're going to use this. We're going to use Cutco as an opportunity to build our communication skills. So I'm going to give you a few tips. So the first one is have the goal to connect with your customer. A lot of times we have the goal of I'm going to sell as much as I can, but instead have the goal of connecting with your customer. You want to look to build long-term relationships with that customer. You never know the people you can meet. I remember being a new rep, a guy owned a car dealership, and he's like, hey, anytime you want a new car, come see me. I'll get it to you for a cost. I remember one of the ladies I showed, I think she was actually my first homemaker customer. She used to own the company that did all the rides at the Lake Fair in Olympia. She's like, just come by and see me, and I'll give you all the tickets you can imagine. I did that first summer, and I went, and it was awesome. We got all free hookups on all the rides. I had over a dozen people give me their business card who are in the financial industry who said, hey, make sure you call me after college about a job, because that's how I talked to them. And that was my goal, was to get a job in the financial industry initially while I was a Cutco rep in college there. But I mean, you should be getting people trying to set you up with their kids, which is kind of awkward when they're like, Susie, come down here and meet the knife guy, or, Billy, come down and meet the knife girl, right? It's kind of funny, but they want you to stay over for dinner. If you're not getting asked those types of things, then you want to keep working on improving connecting with the customer. But in order to accomplish those things, you have to go in with the right expectation and the right mindset. So here are some good objectives to go into an appointment. So the first thing is, what can you provide for the customer? Not what can the customer do for you. It's not going in saying how much CPO can I squeeze out of them, how many recommendations can I get. It's what can I do for this customer. So it was always trying to hook them up with the great set of Cutco that's going to fit their needs, get them a great deal, something they're going to be super happy about. And all of you have probably known somebody in life where they only really talk to people when they want something, right? They generally don't attract a lot of good connections in their life. And so people catch on to that. So a customer has to see that you have their best interest in mind before any other objectives, before a commission, before your push goal, before a sales contest. And if they see you'd be totally happy with helping them before you benefit, then many times they reciprocate that. That's when you start getting lots of recommendations and things. So they don't necessarily just buy more because they like you. They'll trust you more and they'll trust their opinion, but they will give you way more recommendations. But people usually just don't buy ultimate sets because they like you. They'll buy it because they trust you, right? And what I mean by that is when they build trust, you can make recommendations. So if it is somebody that cooks a lot and you say, hey, I think this would be a great set for you, and you've built a great relationship, they're going to trust you more. Right? Now, don't take advantage of that where little 90-year-old grandma who lives by herself and never cooks says, Granny, I think you should get an ultimate set, maybe 3 of them, right? That's probably not going to work either. So, but again, if you have their best interests in mind and not yours, they're going to listen to your recommendations much more. So look to build long-term partners, not just a customer, but a partner. Have a long-term focus with each customer. So how many customers are you going to have call you up every Christmas, every wedding, anytime they need a gift? They call you up because of how you treat them and the shopping experience that you give them. You're not going to try to oversell to them. You're going to help them fit their needs. You're going to give them a great deal, and it's going to be an enjoyable experience working with you. Are you going to have customers that continue to send recommendations to you? Not with you asking, but like, hey, so-and-so came over and they like my knives, give them a call. Just randomly 3 months after the demo. So some keys for that is get on key staff. Buy your Cutco sharpener, not the little sharpener that we sell, but the real legit Cutco sharpener where you can actually do double the edges. So get that one. Learn how to do service calls. That's something we teach in key staff as well. And go see your top customers once every year or two and touch up their knives. I would keep a list of who are your top people that maybe they didn't buy the most, but like you had a good connection with. You're like, this is somebody I want to have as a long-term connection. By the way, this is stuff I just kind of started learning and doing naturally as a rep, but it's one of my biggest regrets is I wasn't more intentional about keeping good relationships, especially as I transitioned from a rep to a manager. I was able to show a lot of great people who I wish I would have been more intentional, like, oh, I should keep this relationship even moving on as a manager and just reach out to them and see how they're doing and stuff. So when you start building a network of customers, you refer and they're referring one to another, you want to see who you can connect to. You'll have value that you might be able to connect some of your customers together as you start building rapport, and you're like, hey, this person looking for something. You're like, oh, I know a customer that does that, blah, 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 and looking to help them in any other way too, right? So the more value you can bring to a customer though, the more they're going to want to connect with you and the stronger your connection is going to be. So the next key, so first is have that goal to connect with your customer. Next big one is focus on your communication. So your actual communication skills. So communication is the key to any relationship, whether it's business, whether it's personal. So a couple things about communication. One is active listening. So active listening is listening more than you talk. You know, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you speak. And the big one, and this is something that I don't know if just people just don't get enough attention in their lives or what, but this is something you'll see with most people is listen to understand what they're saying instead of listening to see what you're going to say next. Most people, if you could go inside their head during a conversation, they're like, what am I going to say next? 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 And then the person finishes talking. You have no idea what they just said because you weren't paying attention to it. You're just trying to figure out what you were going to say. That's annoying for people to talk to. And so everybody just starts reciprocating that. Instead of, it's like, it's okay if you don't have anything to say immediately after somebody's done talking, but you're going to have a lot better things to say if you focus on understanding what they were saying. What are they trying to get across? How are they feeling with what they're communicating instead of just what am I going to say next? So with active listening, it's also about giving cues that you're listening, cues that you understand. So, nodding, facial expressions, matching whatever type of emotion they're conveying, right? Something like, oh, then this happened. You're like, oh, your eyes get big. And, if something's sad, you're down, your body language matches what they're talking about. And speaking of body language, you should be faced in, you have eye contact, right? Open body, not crossed arms, closed off, not like this. If somebody's talking to you and you're going like this, looking off, and that's just rude, right? You're saying like, I don't care what you're saying. Or if you're on your phone, that's the worst nowadays is everybody's on their phone. So you're talking to somebody and they're like this. That person is not motivated to continue to talk to you, right? And then some verbal feedback, right? Okay, head nods and, clarifying. So she said what, or this happened, and giving some verbal feedback as well. So active listening is big on communication. Next is thinking before you speak. Don't feel like you have to talk instantly as soon as the other person shuts their mouth. Think about something before. We've all had that moment where we just blurted something out and then we instantly wish we could have taken it back. So think before you say stuff. And here's the golden nugget with communication. If you do this, your relationships, your communications, it'll save you so much strife in your relationships. It'll immediately increase your skill in communicating. And the bottom line, just make everything much easier in your communication. So when most people talk, they speak with their intention. This is what I mean. And when most people listen, they listen with their perception. This is how I take what you're saying. And if you really want to have great communication, you need to flip those two things. So when you speak, don't necessarily speak with your intentions, speak with how that person is going to perceive it in mind. Before I open my mouth, if I say this, how are they going to take that? And as you listen, instead of listen of how do you perceive that, try to listen for what are they really intending? And when you do that, some people could take that the bad way, but you got to realize that 90% of the people out there, like they have good intentions. Most people, when they're talking, they're not saying, I'm going to say something to make Stuart feel mad, right? They're generally have good intentions, but we don't always take it that way because it came off a little weird. And now we're like, well, that doesn't sound good to me, but that wasn't their intention, right? So try to look at their intentions because most people have good intentions. But we've all had that, been in a conversation before where we're with a friend or a significant other or something, and it seems like they're taking what we say in the worst possible way, right? Or it's like, hey, let's go out to eat. And they're like, what, you don't want to cook here? You don't like my cooking or something, right? Or, girlfriend's like, let's go on a hike. And you're like, you trying to say I'm fat or something? It's like, no, I was just trying to go on a fat. Like, is that really what they're trying to say? So, but trying to speak with the person's perception and intentions in mind there. So if you do that, you'll eliminate or at least cut down dramatically and flip the way you communicate there. So speak with their perception in mind, listen with focus for their intention. So next, that's focus on your communication. Last stuff we're going to go over is building rapport specifically on the demo. So how you build rapport on the demo. So both of the first tips will help you out with this a lot. So first is, what is rapport? So, and I would get this down as rapport is a relationship, especially one of mutual trust and emotional affinity. So mutual trust meaning they both trust each other, and emotional affinity. Affinity is attraction or liking. Not necessarily an intimate attraction, just attraction. So, friends have attraction. Like I want to be friends with that person or whoever, right? So you have to know what rapport is if you're going to build it, right? Your manager's always like, build rapport. And you're like, I don't know what rapport is. How am I going to build it, right? So that's the goal, is to build this relationship of mutual trust where you both trust each other, you both enjoy each other's presence, you like being around that person. So that's the goal of building rapport. So some benefits of building rapport. One, like we mentioned, it builds trust. Two is they will respect your opinion. So when you say, this is our best set, or hey, this one you would use a lot when you're cutting this that they told you they cut, right? They feed off your belief in the product. So when they just see your natural enthusiasm of how fired up you are about this, that transfers much more than if they don't trust you, your enthusiasm doesn't transfer to them as much. So that relationship, it like opens the highway for a transfer of enthusiasm when they trust and they like you. If you guys have a friend where they're like so excited about something, you're like, oh man, that sounds awesome. And then you might have somebody you don't know and you might not trust at all, and they're just talking about how something's great and you're like skeptical of it. You're like, I don't know, right? The only difference there is the rapport you have with that person, right? So, and they give you way more recommendations when you have good rapport. If they like you, they're going to hook you up. Most of the people you show have 100 to 200 people in their cell phone. I mean, most customers they have, if they wanted to, they could probably recommend you to 50 up to 100 people if they really wanted to, right? It would take a lot of time, and you're probably never going to get to where you're averaging 50 recommendations, but you can get to 15. There's plenty of reps that have averaged 10, 15, and even more, right? But they experts at building relationships and rapport. Okay, so some tips on that. Make a good first impression. How do you make a good first impression? Confidence. Customers tend to match you. If you're confident around them, they're going to be confident around you. If you go in and you're nervous, or it usually makes them a little nervous and uncomfortable. Some ways to show you're confident: good eye contact, shaking hands nice and firm, smiling's instant rapport. As soon as they open the door, big grin on there. As soon as their face pops up on a video or whatever, or even if you're just doing a virtual demo and they can't see you, smiling because you can hear it. You can hear when people are smiling. The next part of a rapport is tell them a little about you. You have to make them feel comfortable with you. You don't want to talk a lot about yourself, just enough so they can relate, they can connect. So tell them why you like the job. It's always nice to work with people who enjoy what they're doing. Nobody wants the miserable waiter that does not like being there. When you go out to eat, have you ever had that where you go to a restaurant and you can tell the person's just hating life right now? And your experience ends up being not as good because of that. So talk about why you like the job, whether it's the experience or the flexibility or the income. One of the reasons you should always talk about the job. What's one of the reasons you should always talk about why you like the job? Product, but also what? Oh, this is advanced training one even is that you love the job because we only work off recommendations. right? We only work off recommendations. We don't have to go door to door. We don't have to call random people. Everybody just sends a quick text. So that way they're expecting to hear from us. It's one of my favorite parts about the job, Mrs. Jones, is I'm already kind of connected with the people I'm showing. And they're like, oh, that big seed for recommendations there. Tell them about your goals. People always like to see somebody else who's motivated too, especially with most of you being really young. You can, it's great. They're like, I wish my son had goals. I wish my daughter wanted to pay for some of her tuition and stuff. They should say things like that. Okay. Next part of building rapport is match the customer. So I mean, match the customer. Most customers think and process information usually in one of three types of senses. They're either visual, they're auditory, or they're kinesthetic. So they either see, they're more about hearing, or they're more about feeling, right? So, and you pay attention to the way they talk. I see what you mean. I hear what you're saying. I feel what you're saying. You know, just the way they talk, you can kind of get a sense for that. So try to start matching that. Those little types of things that get you speaking on their wavelength, they'll accept it a lot more. And once you recognize that process, to speak in those terms. Also match their posture and tone. So if they're very upright and proper, then you kind of sit upright, more upright and proper. If like they're sitting like this and you're like slouched down, that's not a good connection. Now there's a difference between matching and mimicking, right? So like if they have a Southern accent, don't try to speak in a Southern accent just to match them. That's not what I'm talking about. But just remember, 93% of communication is tone and body language. So if they're very articulate, you should speak more articulate. If they're kind of more laid back, then you speak more laid back. If they talk really slow and this, if you're going a million miles an hour, that you're not connecting with that person. So, we talk way more about this with our CVI. So most of you took the CVI, the Core Values Index. So get on Rising Star, get on Key Staff, and we'll teach more about like real personality, how to really treat people the way they want to be treated, talk to the way the people they want to be talked to. We'll dig into that more. Okay, and the last thing, most important part about rapport is find a mutual interest that you are genuine about. So find something you both care about. You have to be genuine. If you fake it, they can't tell. So if you know nothing about cars, right? I wasn't a big car person. And, you know, sometimes they have a really nice car. You're like, oh, that's a nice car. Like, tell me about it. They start talking about it. And it's like, they're just speaking way over your head. And they're like, so tell me about your car. It's gray, you know, and yeah, I don't know anything else. So you're not going to build a good connection if you can't talk about something you're both mutual about. So it's even in your manual, like look for the pictures, pets, places, plants, people, those types of things. If people have pictures all over the place in their house, that means they probably care a lot about whatever the pictures are. So that's a good topic to talk about because you know they care about it. People really like to promote all the different things. And then the next thing, and this is a huge one for recommendations, is be Sherlock Holmes on your demo. And what I mean by that is look for clues of what they like and who they might recommend. So there's two things, and this is getting a little advanced, but one thing is we have such a huge advantage of going into somebody's home and doing a demo versus being at a store. Because when you go into a home, you can see everything else that they've spent money on. And you can get an idea on why they spend money on that type of stuff, right? So did they spend money on it because it was the best? Did they spend money on it because their friend recommended it? Did they spend money on it because it was practical and they use it all the time? Did they spend it on because it was visually appealing, right? And then whatever they spend money on for those reasons, use those reasons for Cutco, right? If they buy things because it's the best, talk about Cutco's the best. If they bought it because their friends talked about it, talk about what their friends bought from you, right? If they love stuff because it's practical and they use it all the time, talk about how Cutco's practical and they're going to use it all the time. They basically, the visual cues are going to give you the roadmap of what they value, what they really care about. But also the part with Sherlock Holmes is I would not start a demo until I knew at least 10 people that they could recommend me to. So I'd be talking to them about, so you said little Billy plays baseball. Oh, that's cool. How long has little Billy been playing baseball? Oh, is he on the same team? So you get parents all get together and stuff. I know I got at least 5 or 6 baseball parents there, right? So you said, you're an elementary school teacher? Oh, cool. My dad was an elementary school teacher. Where do you teach? Blah, blah, blah. How long have you been there? Well, okay, there's at least 4 or 5 teachers that she could recommend to, right? And I talk about how long they've been in the neighborhood and how do your neighbors, do you talk to your neighbors much, blah, blah, blah. And it's not like an interrogation, right? Mm-hmm. Don't put like the iPhone light up like this with them, you know, but you're just chatting with them and stuff, but I'm just paying attention. and paying attention. So then at the end, they write a few people down. They're like, oh, I don't know if I know anymore. And like, what about some of the other baseball moms? I remember playing baseball. That'd be great if we could do some of the other baseball moms. Plus, it's fun to show all the people that know each other. And like, oh, okay. And they think of 1, 2, 3. And then like, oh, some of the other teachers. It's always fun showing other teachers. You know, I talk about when my dad was a teacher and like, oh, okay, boom, boom, boom. Now I have 12, 15 leads. Right. But I didn't start the demo. So I already knew there was people they were going to recommend. Okay. The last 2 tips for this. I don't know if it's last 2 or last 1 here. These are also good for dating for you youngsters here is don't be a one-upper, right? Ask follow-up questions. So many people look at a conversation as one person says something. Now it's my turn to say something, right? It's like a tennis match, hitting the ball back. That's not a conversation. That's a competition. Competitions don't necessarily build relationships. A lot of times it's the opposite effect. So if you want people to really enjoy talking to you, then instead of matching everything they have to say, ask a follow-up question. So for instance, you go in, you're like, okay, I'm going to talk about the pictures. Ooh, they have all these pictures of a tropical place. Say, oh, where's that from? And they're like, oh, we went to Hawaii last year. Wrong thing to do is like, oh, I love Hawaii. I wish I could go there. You just like took focus off customer. Focus now is back on me. Versus, oh, cool, you went to Hawaii? I'd love to go to Hawaii. What island did you go to? Oh, we went to there. Did your whole family go? Oh, what was the favorite thing you did there? Right? You keep asking follow-up questions. People will be like, you know, talking to Kim was the best. She's the best conversationalist. I just really enjoyed talking to Kim. And that's because Kim didn't say anything. She just kept asking questions to allow the customer to keep talking. And that's why they like talking to you, because most people don't do that. Most people want like, my turn to talk now, my turn to talk, versus letting them talk and letting them say, hey, what did you, oh, that was really cool. And letting them just explain stuff. So there was 2 things. So that's the one is ask follow-up questions. And the last one, if you really, really want people to like you, this is from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you really want people like you, if you really want to build relationships, is instead of trying to be interesting, be interested. So some people are like, I want to make a good impression. So I want to talk about all the amazing things I've accomplished and look at me and me, versus you want to be interested in them, right? I think the line they talk about is forget what the scenario was, but lady goes out with 2 people. And she said, when I went out with so-and-so, I felt like he was the most interesting person in the world. But when I went out with this person, I felt like I was the most interesting person in the world. And you can guess which one she liked better, right? So be interested, not interesting. So have the goal of connecting not only with your customers, but other people in your life. Use those tips. Really focus on your communication. Listen, think, respond with their perception in mind, and do lots of demos. Practice your rapport building skills. I was a super shy kid with not great communication skills, but I did, I don't know, 1,500 demos or so, something like that. And I got a lot of opportunity to practice. So practice building rapport, connecting with your customers, and you'll be an excellent communicator before you know it. All right. That is all for today for the recording. So we will stop that.